This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And for those of you possibly listening for the first time, we invite guests like Jonathan McLernan on to talk about their journey in life. We're all on a journey, and we may think that we're stuck someplace. Looks like Jonathan is at the ocean, maybe Hawaii on a desert island. Um, and you know what? That is part of the journey, even when it is virtual and really important. So I want to thank Jonathan for joining us today. And I've read a little bit about your journey. I saw some pictures of you from the past, and you have transformed. So tell us a little bit about what happened and what made those changes.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me as well. And I wish I really was in the location that my
Yeah.
that my Zoom video shows, but I'm actually in Canada, north of Montana, so in the province of Alberta. So I live just a couple hours from the Rocky Mountains. So just to give a bit of a backstory, like I've had a really varied background from nanotechnology researcher. So I was a chemistry student at University of Victoria. I spent 6 years as a marine engineer in the Navy. I'm a four-time entrepreneur. I've had two failed businesses, and I spent a few years as a globetrotting English teacher as well. I've also owned a nutrition and supplement store, and now I run an online nutrition coaching business, as well as I actually mentor new coaches and teach them how to build online businesses. So that's in a coconut-sized nutshell
Yeah.
a few of the things that I've done. Um, in terms of my own personal journey, so about 10 years ago, when my wife and I were doing this world tour, I guess we'd call it. Not that we're world famous, but we were kind of on this globe-trotting adventure for a couple of years and living in South Africa. And I went through a trauma down there, and as a result of that, I didn't really know how to deal with trauma at the time, and I became a binge eating food addict. And so I went from being someone who was athletic and youthful and strong to someone who was obese. And I for the first time in my life, found myself kind of wading into this murky world of weight loss and diet culture. And, I would say prior to my weight gain, I would have thought that anybody who struggled with their weight was like lazy or undisciplined. But after because I didn't, I say nobody sets out to become a binge eating food addict. It wasn't that this was, but it was, I was trying to cope with something, and we can unpack it if you're curious, but I don't mind sharing. But it was trying to deal with the fallout of this trauma that food was a cheap, readily available, and socially acceptable way of trying to deal with my trauma.
Sure.
Yeah. And so after a lot of failed attempts, so I've lost over 100 pounds and kept it off, but I joke that I've actually lost more like 600 pounds because I'd lost and gained weight so many times. And so I think after like failing so many times to lose weight, I'd really become quite like angry and spiteful towards my own body. I felt like it had kind of betrayed me or failed me because I used to be athletic and strong, and now here I was obese, trying to force my body to lose the weight. It wasn't doing what I wanted it to do, and now I had all these issues with self-image and body image and things like that. And kind of in masculine culture, we don't talk a lot about our emotions and our feelings and things like that. So here I am suppressing all of these things as well. It was kind of like I was trying to punish my body into submission. So that I would say the number of diets that I've tried have probably spanned in terms of scope from like being a raw food vegan all the way up to nearly eating like a carnivore or carnivore keto, it would be called. All of those sort of fad diets and things that I was trying, because one thing wouldn't work and so on, it was because I hadn't actually taken care of the real problem. And it was when I hired a coach back in 2017. He didn't treat me the way I thought he would. You know, coaching doesn't have to be this experience where someone makes you feel guilty or ashamed or tries to
Sure.
coerce you and things like that. He actually treated me with compassion and respect, and he didn't judge me for where I was at in my journey. And that was kind of new to me because I was beating myself up pretty badly. I had a lot of negative self-talk, and it might sound a bit strong to use this term, but there's a lot of self-abuse, really. And I would even sometimes spite eat because I was so mad at my body for not losing weight. I was like, fine, if you're going to be fat, I'm going to make you fat. It was just really, I look back now, and it's hard to picture that that was where I was at. And I share that because I think I have a story of hope. Um, there was a lot of like messy struggle in this journey. But this coach, he really helped me. He shone a light on what the problem was, the biggest problem, and that was my relationship with myself and with my body. And he worked with me to start cultivating a sense of self-love and self-compassion, which is really unfamiliar for a male. We don't really talk about things like self-love and
Right.
self-compassion. And so, in that, as I started to heal my relationship with myself, I started to heal my relationship with food, and my relationship with others began to improve, and I just really started to become this new person. And I think ultimately that's what inspires me to do the work I do today, because I kind of see the struggles that people are trapped in, and I see what's kind of on offer for them. Diet pills, diet shakes, fad diets, weight loss, rapid weight loss programs, and so on. And like we're missing the forest for the trees, and so that's kind of what inspires my work.
Well, I'm so glad we are talking to a male about weight loss, um, self exploration, self love. And you're
Mm-hmm.
right. We look at women look at men saying, you know what? It's okay if they have extra pounds on them. Okay. They can get away with it. But as a woman, no, I can't. And the reality of it is, we can get away with it if that's what we choose to
Mm-hmm.
be. And there's nothing wrong with choosing that as long as it doesn't hurt your health.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I, like you, have been on this yo yo for many, many years.
Yeah.
Even when I found something that worked for me, somehow, um, over years, I sort of got out of what was being good for me. And now
Mm-hmm.
I'm back on that path. And I'm back on that path, not for anybody, but for myself. And it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like that's what your coach, your mentor had you see, you know?
Yeah. It's I think we don't talk about it as much because our brain is drawn to like let's say being overweight. I was in a lot of pain, like not just physically. There was like the emotional pain as well. But I mean, life was like everything was more difficult. So walking upstairs, my knees and ankles and the hip hurt. Like trying to tie shoes. I had like a 3 foot shoehorn because I couldn't get to my feet. I would, things like wiping your bum. I know it's like not a great visual, but things that we kind of take for granted become really difficult when you're carrying like 100 pounds of extra weight on your body. And not to mention like the strain on the internal organs. It's not glamorous to talk about visceral fat, but that's one of the things that really, drives things like heart disease and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and so on. And, I'm in one sense, I appreciate the messaging of body positivity and health at every size, because I don't believe we should create moral or character judgments around people for their size, their struggles with weight. But on the same token, I fear that we've kind of, might I say, infantilized it a little bit to the point where we say, well, if it feels good, it can't be bad for me. And I say, well, cocaine feels good and it destroys your brain, right? And so
Yes,
we want to be careful we don't fall down this slippery slope where like eating an entire cake would feel good in the moment, but it would be really destructive for my health, especially as a repeated pattern of behavior. And so try to find this place of almost more like neutrality towards this, where we're allowed to want to change. We're allowed to say, because I mean, human beings are naturally wired for growth, really. So to say like, hey, I'm okay with where I'm at, but I'm also wanting to change and grow, and we're allowed to be there.
absolutely. Now, I know you live in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm having a problem here in the US that when I go to the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
it's difficult to find things that have no sugar
Mm-hmm.
or at least low in sugar,
Mm-hmm.
low carbs. Um, my husband happens to be diabetic, so I'm
Okay.
very careful what we purchase.
Yeah.
I lost all my weight initially when I started cutting out those sugars and those
Mm-hmm.
carbohydrates. Um, and then I don't know what happened with my grocery shopping, but I wasn't being as careful. I am again, but um, food manufacturers are
Yeah.
making us fat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I I talk about kind of the a hero mindset
Okay.
when I work with people, and it really stands for healthy, educated, relentless offense. So healthy means cultivating healthy habits and behaviors. Um, Educated means knowing what you're working with in terms of your own biology, and also knowing what you're up against. Relentless, to be clear, it doesn't mean pedal to the metal, insane stimulant fueled effort every day. It just means a refusal to quit, because this journey's hard. The truth is, I wish it was fast and easy. I wish I could tell you that. But the truth is, weight loss is hard. And then offense means we can't wait for someone to come and save us. We live in a world that is engineered to keep us sedentary and to make us obese. Because of that, we have to, if you choose to pursue weight loss, you're swimming against the tide. Now, I focus on what I call brain driven weight loss. The reason for this is really, and you mentioned food manufacturers, they're like kind of trying to hijack our brains. In fact, they've done it really successfully.
Right.
So it's, I am an advocate for personal responsibility, but we also want to be informed this is what we're up against. So, for example, refined sugar in our diet, I'm not going to say don't eat, never eat sugar again, but there really is no beneficial purpose to it. Like, so human beings were kind of wired to search for bright colors that helped us to see fruit and trees. We're wired to go for those calorie dense things. I say that we have a famine biology, but now we're living in a feast world. So generally speaking, and people would ask me, what do I think the best diet is? And I say, well, by and large, I'm a dietary agnostic. In other words, we need to look at the individual as a whole and try and identify what specifically their struggles are. And there's going to be a process of trial and error to figure out what works best for you. For me, I tend to do better on a lower carbohydrate intake. Because I've been obese, that can lead to impaired insulin sensitivity and glucose management and so on. And so, generally speaking, I don't eat a lot of sugar. It's not that I never eat it, but I rarely do. I'm not ketogenic because I believe that can really foster an unhealthy all or nothing type mindset. And I definitely, when I exercise, I feel better when I have carbohydrates to fuel my activity. But as a whole, carbohydrates are a fuel. So they're not, we use fats for building blocks for cell membranes, and we use protein for muscles. Carbohydrates' primary purpose is fuel. So if I have a less active day, it's like when the gas tank is full, you don't keep pumping.
Right.
And so so you kind of think about it in those terms. We can only store so much in the way of carbohydrates in our body, and then we'll start to convert the extra ones to fat. And so why I think we became afraid of carbs is because we're just swimming in this massive overabundance of refined carbohydrates, which do breed diabetes and heart disease in particular.
So I don't know if you've noticed this. There's been, probably for the last 6 months to a year, there is an ad on Facebook. And supposedly it's been supported by top-notch people. And I don't even know who those top-notch people are. But you take this pill with water every night, and in 2 weeks, you've lost 50, 100 pounds. And I get very upset every time I see the ad because number one, if it were real and if it were really approved and safe, every doctor would be giving this to their patients.
100%.
So I really resent when I see these ads because it's like you said, it's work, okay? But it's knowing your body. For a while, I was doing intense exercise all the time. Was I as careful with my diet? Probably not. Okay. I was losing inches, but I was not losing weight. And so every time I stepped on the scale, I just wanted to cry. And it took me, taking a step back and going, whoa, what am I doing? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was creating muscle that was causing those pounds to stay there. But because I wasn't eating properly, I wasn't burning off the fat and the sugars.
Yeah.
So when I realized that, it was like, okay, keep it in your head and watch what you're doing. So what I do, and I don't know if this is what you recommend, but I keep a log every day, everything I've eaten. And my watch, identifies my steps and my exercising. And so at the end of the day, I can go back in and go, yeah, I only walked 1,000 steps and my goal was 7,000 today. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder I didn't burn things off. Oh, yeah, I did ride the stationary bike today, but you know what? I cheated. I only gave myself 5 minutes rather than the 15 or 20 that
Mm-hmm.
would build up the burn. So, do you tell people to stay that intense with what they're doing?
No.
Okay.
Probably the opposite. So you touched on a couple of things. So I'll just go, and we'll come back to the exercise and the intense piece in a sec. But you mentioned that Facebook ad, and really that ad should be reported because it's medically unsafe, right? This is well, chances they're not selling you any. Like it's if someone is actually take and consume it, either it's a dud pill or there's a compound out there that was used in the underground world of bodybuilding, 20, 30, 40 years ago, where you could actually burn fat incredibly fast. There's a problem. When you burn fat, you generate heat. When you burn it rapidly, you generate a lot of heat, and people are dying of organ failure.
Wow.
But this is how desperate people were to lose weight that they would take a pill where one of the side effects is death from organ failure. And the thing is if you took these pills, I'm not going to name them because I don't want people going looking for
Sure.
them.
Absolutely.
If you took these pills and you took too many, there was nothing you could do if you started the overheating process. They could basically take you to a hospital and make you comfortable and say you have about 8 hours.
Wow.
So I share that because anything that's promising to lose, 50 or 100 pounds in a very short window of time will either kill you from internal organ failure or it's completely lying. The other thing that never gets talked about is, say, water weight fluctuation. I can gain a pound by drinking, what would be a quart of water or a pint, I think. And I'm not sure the U.S. measurement system.
Yeah.
500 mils of water, I think, is a pint. So if I drink a pint of water, I've gained a pound. But I haven't gained a pound of body fat. I also wake up in the morning and I go pee, and hey, maybe you lose a pound or two, depending how big the pee is. Well, I haven't lost any fat. I've just adjusted water weight. So fluctuations of a couple pounds here or there are quite normal as our hydration status changes. So now, when it comes to activity, I don't really recommend that people try to trade activity for calories. That's a losing equation because you can eat a slice of pizza, for example, and maybe it packs 300 to 500 calories. That's probably a good hour's worth of work to get to that, depending on the intensity. The exercise machines often overestimate how many calories you burn with activity. So let's just say, for example, I'm 39. I'm 6'1", 230. So I'm a pretty big dude, and I probably burn between 2,400. Let's just say 2,400 calories at rest if I don't do any activity. That's like 100 calories an hour at most. When people try to suggest you can burn 1,000 calories in an hour, like that's a bit of a stretch. You think about how much your metabolism was having to rev up, unless you're maybe this, even if you're like this ultra marathon endurance runner, the reality is your body is really efficient at it. So the other part of exercise, and this is not me saying don't exercise, I'm a very, very big advocate for activity, and I'll explain how I encourage people to go about that. But we get efficient at exercise. The more times we do it, the better we get at it, the more efficient it becomes, and the less calories you burn every time we do the same thing. That's a natural famine adaptation. So our body wants to be energy efficient. We needed this famine biology to survive millennia of food scarcity. So we store fat really easily and we burn fat really slowly. And if we try to burn it fast, your body will fight to get back to where that fat was. It will turn up hormones that make you hungry. It will turn up hormones that make you lazy in order to restore the fat you once had. And I like to say that a fat cell is a gift that keeps on giving. What I mean by that is once a fat cell is created, it's yours for life. You can shrink it, you can empty it, but it's there waiting to be refilled. Again, this is a really necessary mechanism. If you had to create new fat cells every time you came out of a famine, that would be really difficult. We're much more likely to be able to survive if we already have fat cells waiting to be filled whenever there's a period of food abundance. So if we understand our biology and realize that, feast times used to come a couple times a year, usually during harvest. And now we can feast 24 hours a day.
Right.
No wonder we're struggling with our weight. So that's part of the educated piece. We understand our biology, our biological reality. You also mentioned the food manufacturers and grocery stores. So they use the best psychologists in the world to create the most emotionally compelling advertising campaigns. They know that if you see a message repeatedly, it's going to get wired into your subconscious. I think the greatest marketing campaign in the history of marketing comes from Snickers. It was 4 words: hungry, grab a Snickers. Short, memorable, and it's almost like they're playing with a cheat code. It's that good. I wonder how many millions they paid someone to come up with that slogan.
Yeah.
The best thing that Snickers ever did was they tricked the world into thinking they're a meal replacement. They're not a candy bar. That's what we're up against. See, that's that educated piece. You got to know what you're
Right.
up against. Now, the next piece of the puzzle is when they manufacture these foods, they're not manufacturing them for health. Not even quote unquote health foods that are being greenwashed or brownwashed or whatever to try and pretend to be healthy. They're making foods that are going to trigger a certain response in your brain to make you crave more. So they create a dopamine response in the brain. They want these foods to be addictive because the more you eat, the more they sell, the more profits they make. That's the nature of business. So if a food comes in a package, now we'll put aside things like rice and lentils and kidney beans, and they're not such an issue.
Sure.
But when we get into we'll call them the ultra processed foods, they're not engineered for health. They have to try and add some things in to be able to make label claims like, oh, 50% of your daily recommended vitamin C. Why? Because they literally stripped everything out of like a whole food and just tried to chemically like recombine a few of these ingredients. The whole purpose is to make you crave and want more of them with a little bit of virtue signaling on the box.
Wow. I'm going to look at grocery shopping a lot different from this point forward. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. And so you think about I think it touched on like looking for fruit in trees. Fruit is brightly colored. And so our eyes are drawn to these bright colors because that's a source of calorie dense energy, which we used to need. Well, now we use brightly colored boxes instead.
Hmm.
They're playing games with us. But most people don't know this. So this is why I talk about brain driven weight loss. We got to know who we're dealing with and what we're up against, because the overweight and obesity crisis that we have in the Western world is not entirely a personal failing. It's not because we're all lazy and stupid. We have a society that's been engineered to make us sedentary and obese. Netflix, they do a great little trick to keep you watching. It's called open loop psychology. So what it is, and I mean, episodes used to do this, but you couldn't binge watch them back in the days of non-streaming
Right.
TV, right? They will close one story loop to leave you with a sense of satisfaction, but they're going to leave you a teaser. So it's called an open loop. Our brains don't like open loops. So they're going to tell you an incomplete story, and you badly want to know what happens next because it's a really compelling story. And so you feel this urge, I must get that question answered. And when you know that, they know that this is like they're doing this deliberately to get you to keep watching episodes and binge watching shows. Social media is engineered to create a dopamine drip in your brain. When you swipe down on your phone, it's a similar action to a slot machine. You get a reward. They're
Yep.
playing games with us. So I share that because you go, oh my gosh, how the heck do we even, in this world, how the heck do we lose weight when we have all of these powerful forces against us? And the first step is becoming aware of it. This is what we're up against. And in order for you to successfully lose weight, you have to go against the tide. That's really hard because the majority of people you meet are overweight. We're stressed out, we're burnt out, and all we want is comfort. And they're giving it to us. So it's like the carrot and the stick. We're burnt out and stressed out because of the world they've created for us. And then they're giving us, the stuff to keep us sedentary and fat. And it's like, I'm not trying to be conspiratorial. I'm just trying to describe the world as we know it.
Well, and as I think of how I grew up and how my husband grew up,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you know, moms, back in the day, they cooked dinner, okay.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a lot of processed foods, but my mother baked every day because everybody had to have dessert. And so, and your meal had to have potatoes and your meal had to have bread and
Mm-hmm.
all these things that we got conditioned to.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember one day my mother-in-law, we had gone out to lunch and my husband just kept eating bread and butter before the meal came. And she's, telling him, that's not good for you. You're going to gain weight. And he looked at her, he said, but you always gave me bread and butter with all my meals. I'm conditioned. And she goes, yeah, but it's not good for you. And I thought about that
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, we teach we teach our kids what we learned. And
Mm-hmm.
if we don't break those cycles,
Yeah.
um, it's going to get worse. So
Yeah.
what do, and I heard what you're saying about exercise,
Mm-hmm.
because I really have to agree with you. When I'm on an exercise program and I'm doing the same thing, 5 out of 7 days at the same rate, I'm not really losing anything. That I
Mm-hmm.
do know. I finally, I finally have realized that you
Yeah.
got to change it up a little bit. Um,
You got to push and be a bit uncomfortable.
Pardon?
So you got to push a little bit and be uncomfortable, but
Yes.
you don't have to be hardcore grinding, nonstop hustling, or whatever terminology the fitness industry is trying to throw at you. You kind of just need to be consistent with a little bit of an increase as you gain ability.
So, because most of us are in a hurry when we go
Mm-hmm.
to the grocery store or when we order online, are you recommending that we um, use natural products only?
Well, we have to be realistic about the world that we live in, right?
Okay.
Convenience foods exist for a reason. Now, if you want to say, well, what is an ideal scenario? And for me, an ideal scenario is we wouldn't eat hyper processed foods. We wouldn't eat foods that contain, a high percentage of added sugar because it does nothing for our health. That's a tough sell because these foods taste really good. And when we're stressed out, eating these foods makes us feel good. So people will be like, you joy thief. How dare you take the joy out of our lives, right? So, but realistically, I would say most of the time we would eat mostly whole foods. Whole foods are really, we call them like one ingredient foods, basically. Rice is one ingredient. Potatoes get a bad rap. I don't have a problem with potatoes. It's like potato chips, hash browns, French fries. These sorts of things are where the problems exist, right? It's not actually the humble potato, or even if you take a baked potato and then you smother it in sour
Yeah.
cream, butter, bacon
Yeah.
bits, and so on, right? The humble potato is not really the issue. It's actually a really nutritious food. So, to answer your question, I would say I recommend, say, for my clients, that they aim to eat about 80% whole foods. Most people, it's more like 50-50. Now, how do you make? So the question is, how do you make it easier? Because you talk about being busy and convenience foods and things like that. Frozen vegetables, number one, they're already prepped for you. They were picked at peak ripeness, and then they're flash frozen, so they lock in the nutrient integrity. So, they actually are quite nutritious. They get a bum rap. I'm less a fan of canned vegetables because they tend to lose their nutrients, but frozen veg. So now it's like, cool. Worst case scenario, you dump some frozen veg in a bowl and you microwave it. Is it ideal? No, but it's better than, say, a double Big Mac. And so doesn't, I like to say that I outsource my cooking to my appliances. So I have a rice cooker, I have an instant pot, I have an air fryer, I have an oven. So put something in one of those things, set the timer, go do something else. So, how long does it take me to put 2 cups of rice and 4 cups of water in my rice cooker? 2 minutes, maybe, if that. How long does it take me to put, I just have one young son, but he's just breastfed right now. How long does it take me to put 2 chicken thighs in an air fryer and hit start? A minute? That kind of thing. Or dump half a bag of frozen veg into a glass tray and put it in the oven and roast it at high temperature so they don't get too mushy. A minute? So if we can come up with ways that we make, so I say to people, I can show you how to make healthy eating faster, more convenient, and less expensive than buying fast food. Because why do we buy fast food? Because it's fast and convenient and cheap in our heads. But I could give you a healthy meal that's complete for less than you'd pay for a big, well, I don't know in the US, but at least in Canada, less than you'd pay for a Big Mac.
Yeah, I haven't had Big Mac in a number of years, but I'm sure they're expensive. Um, Anything when you go out is
Mhm.
expensive today.
Yeah.
Um, but I like what you're saying because we have to get that new interpretation of what is just as easy or easier,
Hmm.
what is just as fast. Um, and I know I use an air fryer and I love it because I can, like you, I can put in, 2 turkey patties or something like that, and within minutes, they're ready to eat.
Hmm.
Um, my husband is a fruit eater. I'm a vegetable eater. So, um, you know, that's pretty easy. I cut up the fruit when I get it at the grocery store. And I'm also very cognizant of which fruits are higher in sugar content
Hmm.
than others. Um, so we're sort of doing the right things.
Mm.
Where we're doing the wrong things is when we are working all day long,
Yeah.
um, and we all of a sudden get hungry because we haven't had lunch and we grab the wrong thing,
Hmm.
like the Snickers bar.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what the hard part is for most people. I say they are people. They're mentally dieting every single day, and it's mentally exhausting.
Yes.
So, in other words, we're consciously thinking about everything we eat and consciously thinking about all the time about the weight we need to lose and so on. So, in our head, it feels like we're putting all of this effort in. And it's true in a sense of cognitive energy or mental energy. But if we look at the physical, real world, it doesn't really actually match up to that. Now, if I go back to my theme of this brain driven weight loss, what I want to do is I want to help people reverse engineer their healthy lifestyle and wire it into their brain so that it becomes automatic. And it is possible because their brain forms habits and habitual behaviors. Have you ever driven from one place to another and you get there and you go, oh my gosh, I don't remember driving here?
Oh, yeah. Way too many times recently.
Right. And it shocks you. You go, how the heck did I get here safely? That's your brain doing what it's done many times over on autopilot. It's pretty cool. So now imagine if it was we did that for your brain with regards to a healthy lifestyle, where it just became your default behavior and you didn't have to consciously think about it all the time. All of a sudden, so now it's not about how fast can I lose the weight. It's we've built a lifestyle that's going to bring you to a healthy weight and it's going to keep you there, and it doesn't take a lot of effort because you've wired it into your brain. That's the power of this brain driven approach. Now, that's only one piece of the puzzle because we also have things like your emotional health, your mental health, your mindset, your beliefs, your sense of identity. So you factor all of that in because along the way, when we try to create change, we're going to meet resistance. So what I mean by that is our brain already has a lot of pre-existing habits and behaviors. If we were to use that spray they use on CSI and say put it on the bottom of your feet, we could see a pattern of how you move in and out of your kitchen and pantry, and how many times you walk to the fridge and so on. You shine that UV light, and
Right.
well, all these things happen on autopilot. I'm sure you've found yourself at times like holding the pantry door open or holding the fridge door open and kind of just staring blankly, and then you have this moment of like, what am I doing here? How did I get here? Well, again, that's our brain doing things on autopilot. So knowing that our brain has this ability, if we can tap into it and we can create healthy behaviors that become almost automatic, it becomes a lot easier to live healthy. And so it's the fact that if we're mentally dieting all the time, it feels really difficult because our mind is always consciously thinking about it. Well, what if we made it so you didn't have to think about it all the time? That'd be a lot easier.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I went to the doctor the other day and they said, in the last week, you lost 3 pounds. And jokingly, I said, I think it's the clothes I'm wearing. Um,
Yeah.
and, she said, well, accept it. And I am more, yes, we all want to lose pounds,
Hmm.
but I am more about feeling healthy,
Hmm.
um, not feeling uncomfortable in my clothes,
Hmm.
um, being able to, ride the bike, take a walk, whatever it
Absolutely.
is, and not not focus on the number per se.
Hmm.
However, some of us when we've allowed ourselves to get, and I'm going to use the word lazy because
Mhm.
that's what happened to me. Um, you're going to have to watch that number a little
Yes,
bit because you know where the safe number is.
absolutely.
So if somebody were to come to you today and say, okay, I know you can't promise me results in a day, 2, or a week, but what is the process? And for the average person, when does it finally like kick into gear? They can go, I really get it now.
It's going to look different for each person, truthfully, because it really depends on where they're at, and that's where, like, could I say the art of coaching comes in. I'm going to meet somebody where they're at. So I say, think about me like a tour guide, not a Sherpa. So a lot of people would like it if they could just hand me their problems, I could solve their problems and hand it back. But in doing that, you've not learned anything. You haven't learned and you haven't become empowered. And so what that means is when I'm not working with you, you go back to your default habits and behaviors. And so I want to, when I work with somebody, I want to empower them. We do that through education and we do that through implementing specific principles. So we already know the basic principles of a healthy lifestyle. They're not a secret. It's going to involve some kind of probably daily activity, daily movement, quality sleep, stress management, nutrient dense foods, and hydration. Like it's not all that complicated in one sense, but simple and easy aren't necessarily the same thing. So we say, how do we take these principles and shape them for your unique circumstances? That's what we want to do. And so when I work with somebody, I mean, I've had clients lose 50, 75, 80 pounds in 6 to 9 months. More importantly, what I'm proud of is they've kept the weight off. So maybe I'm not promising you rapid results in 30 days or in 12 weeks or something like that. But I'm saying if you trust the process and follow along with what I teach. So my program is called Lifestyle 180. It's a 180-day program. If you follow along and apply yourself, you're going to see not only see results, you're going to get results that you get to keep. And that's much more important than how fast can you lose the weight.
Well, and I can't agree with you more because when I made my lifestyle changes, it probably took me over a year to
Mm-hmm.
lose the weight. I lost, like you, almost 100 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm back up 30.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not proud of it, but I'm not shaming myself for it
Absolutely,
because,
yeah.
that's not going to do me any good. It becomes becoming aware of it and looking at yourself and saying, okay, am I okay with myself here? And physically and mentally, am I in a good place? And when
Mm-hmm.
I decided a couple weeks ago, I am not. Okay. My doctors can tell me all they want that I'm healthy as a horse. It's like, I don't want to be a horse. I want to be me. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and so it's been making those changes slowly,
Mm-hmm.
because I also knew that I grew up with a mother who was on yo-yo diets, and she
Mm-hmm.
would just wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm going on the cabbage soup diet. And she'd go on it. And
Yeah.
for 3 weeks, that's all she ate. And she lost her weight. But then again, maybe 6 weeks, 12 weeks later, she was packing it back on again
Mm-hmm.
because she was eating real foods.
Mm-hmm. Back to the default patterns of behavior. So we didn't change what was taking place in the brain. So a fad diet is like imposing external rules on somebody, trying to force the change. And then as soon as you take that restriction away, we fall right back into our old patterns of behavior. And because we already have the fat cells created, the weight gain happens really rapidly. And it can be very, very discouraging for people because they think, I worked so hard to lose the weight, because you did. You tried something really extreme and uncomfortable, thinking, I just need to get this over as fast as possible. And then, bingo, you regain the weight 2 or 3 times faster than you lost the weight. And so I like to say that weight loss is a doorway, it's not a destination. So weight loss will improve the health of almost anyone that undertake it, if they're overweight. But it's not really about a number on the scale. It's about quality of life. And so I say the number is kind of like a placeholder for a future, that we feel like it's going to enable us to live in. So when we feel comfortable in our skin, we wear clothes that we love. I like to say we can shop in our closet. We can live life more fully, and that's maybe not feeling out of breath, hiking the mountains, getting down on the floor to play with kids or grandkids, having the freedom to do the activity you want instead of the one you wish. So weight loss is really about giving us the opportunity to experience life more fully. Happiness doesn't lie with a certain number on the scale. Like, yes, okay, if you see that number, that goal that you had, you're going to kind of feel a sense of accomplishment for a day or two. But really, the idea of happiness, it's a more settled thing. You're able to live life independently on your terms. And so really we think about our mobility is our independence. Our health is really our true wealth, because you can't purchase it at a certain point. You can't buy it back. And so I like this idea of like a health pension or a fitness pension. We talk about investing in a financial pension, saving up money for old age. Well, what about like a health pension where we invest every day in our health because we want to live a long and healthy life? We don't just want to, sit in a rocking chair and fade away in our advanced years. We want to still be active. I'm coming up to 40 and I have an 8-month-old. I'm going to be like in nearly 60 when this kid's graduating. I don't want people to be like, oh, and so nice you brought your grandpa to graduation. I want to be present in his life. So here's where we want to cultivate our emotionally compelling reason. For me, I want to be healthy for my son. I want to be able to get on the floor and play with him. I want to. He moves all the time, but pretty soon he's going to figure out how to walk and run, and I want to be able to keep up with him. If he runs towards a road, I got to be able to sprint after him. It would break my heart to have to sit on the couch and go, sorry, Daddy, can't get down and play with you because I can't get up. So that really has nothing to do with a number on the scale. It's everything with how I want to be able to live my life. And when we can tap into that, I think now we become more willing to go through the discomfort of losing weight and getting healthy, because it is an uncomfortable process. We're asking our body to kind of go against its natural biological urge, which is to store fat. Our body wants to store fat until we hit the next famine. So if we have a good reason why we're willing to be uncomfortable, and for me it's my son, it helps me move past my urges to want to binge eat. I'm a former binge eating food addict. I used to be morbidly obese. I tap into my parental love to give me the strength to keep moving forward. I've also made I've made my healthy lifestyle almost automatic, and it takes time to do that. So I wanted to touch on this one for you with regards to activity. This concept of CMG, can't miss goals. So what determines the success of a habit is the repeatability of the behavior. So if we started and said, okay, I want you to do 60 minutes of activity 5 days a week, and you've previously been sedentary, you're likely going to fail because it's a really big shift in your lifestyle. But if we said, I want you to go for a 5-minute walk every day, or a 5-minute ride on your bike every day. After that, if you want to do more, you can, but you don't have to. Well, when you go to think about it in that morning, you're like, do I feel like doing it today? Well, I just got to do 5 minutes. Okay, I can do that. So we want to make it so easy that you basically can't miss it, hence the term a can't miss goal. Now, what we're doing here is not really about the magnitude of the behavior, whether it's 5 minutes or 60 minutes. It's about the repeatability of the behavior, and that's how we create a pattern or a habit or a lifestyle behavior. And so I started with 5,000 steps a day. Now my average is 11,200. But I actually still keep my goal at 5,000 steps, interestingly, because, hey, maybe there's some days where I'm a little tired and in pain. I just don't have it in me to, and that's okay. Now I've got a huge streak going of like a couple hundred days. So this is working with our brain the way our brain works. And so I would encourage you and anyone listening out there who's thinking about this is figure out what that can't miss goal is for you. Something so easy that you can do it every day and you build a repeated pattern of behavior. It might be with nutrition. It might be include one colorful plant in each meal. Maybe a piece of fruit at breakfast, some vegetables at lunch, and vegetables at dinner. You can always build on it once the pattern of behavior is established.
It's interesting because when I got back into the exercising a couple of weeks ago, that's exactly how I started it. When I had stopped 2 months ago, I was riding that bike 25 to 30 minutes a day at, the most intense that I could. I was lifting hand weights, jumping around, doing all these things. And something happened that made me stop it. When I decided to start back up, I gave myself a goal of 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And if I go more, that's fine. And there have been a couple of days this past week that at 6 minutes, I was exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
There's just, I wasn't accomplishing the, I wasn't getting that rush from it. Okay.
Yeah.
But last night, without even realizing, at 38 minutes on the bike, my husband actually walked into the room and said, "Are you going to ride the bike all night?" And I looked at him. Then I looked at my watch and was like, "Oh my gosh," you know, but I
Yeah.
felt really, really good. Now,
Yeah.
does that mean tonight I'm going to ride for 38 minutes? I don't know, but I'll ride for at least five.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the power of a can't miss goal is it helps us to establish a consistent pattern of behavior. And so what I would posit, I guess, is that I think you were because we don't very often look at this from the perspective of our nervous system. You were exercising really really intensely, which can stress our nervous system. So exercise is a type of stress. Now, generally, we would regard it as a good type of stress because it promotes growth and development and health, but it's still a type of stress. And so, if you are draining your batteries faster than you're recharging them, you are going to burn out and get exhausted and not be able to continue. And that's why, again, I go back to this concept of a can't miss goal or a CMG. Because even on the days that I feel really tired, I can always fit in maybe 5 or 10 minutes of activity to make sure that I get my minimum of 5,000 steps. And then it feels like, hey, I did something deliberately today for my health. I kept the streak going. Because ultimately, again, what we want to do, like you were asking kind of when I work with somebody what the process might look like, I would say, this whole weight loss is a doorway, it's not a destination. Well, let's figure out what the destination looks like for you. When you're at your goal weight or in that sort of range, because you're never going to be like specifically on one number for the rest of your life, but
Right.
let's say you're in the range, the healthy range of weight. What's your day to day life going to look like? How do you think you're going to be living in a way that, like, what's it going to look like when you're supporting that lifestyle? What will your nutrition look like? What will your activity look like? Your stress management, your sleep quality, and so on. And now we can assess where are you at presently, and let's figure out where the gaps are between where you'd like to be and where you're presently at in terms of your lifestyle. And then from there, let's figure out what's probably the most important piece to lay down first. And that gives us an idea of where we should start. From there, we just start putting the building blocks in place. And one by one, we start building these lifestyle habits in. And by the end of it, you've reverse engineered your healthy lifestyle, but it didn't feel overwhelming because we did it piece by piece. And because we put it into practice, it's not just here's the principle, oh, I can do it. No, put it into practice and let's track you doing this. So we put in conscious effort in the beginning to now cultivate a behavior. The more times you repeat it, the more likely it becomes a habit.
So, how can our listeners find you? Because I will tell you, um, there is a gym that my husband and I belong to. Um, since COVID, we have not been in the gym, so we
Mm.
do what we can at home. But
Yeah.
when I go in there, um, in the past, it's always been, "Oh, you're doing all the wrong things, Karen. These are the things you should be doing." And it's like, so you want me to pay you because you're telling me I'm doing things wrong. And so a lot of us, like, no, I don't want to be coached. But
Mm-hmm.
listening to what you're saying, you're going to guide me
Mm-hmm.
step by step. And I may not do everything at once because
Yeah.
my brain just isn't going to be there.
No, you got a life going on. You have other things going on in your life, and the way that I approach coaching is I say we're like two experts collaborating. So I think there's this we got this idea wrong somehow in the coaching and fitness sort of industry. I'm the expert, you're the dummy. You do what I say. That does not empower you. That does not create independence. That does not help you create permanent change. That creates dependence on me. And I say, my goal, because obviously this is how I make my living, is helping people. But I want to create referral business, not repeat business. In other words, I want to work so successfully with somebody that they want to tell other people about it. Be like, hey, you know
Sure.
what? This guy's awesome. he helped me transform my life. Now, why is it say we're like two experts collaborating? You are the expert of your body and how you feel in this present moment. I don't have a meter, I don't have a meter tapped into,
Right.
so I need your expertise. You're the expert of your life experience. So we want to understand what your past history looks like because it helps us to understand your present behavior. I'm not a psychological archaeologist. In other words, we're not going to go back and try and dig up your past and correct things that happened in the past. But if we understand what happened in the past, we use that to inform, aha, I understand why this is happening today. Like, the emotional connection between eating bread and butter at mealtime as a kid. That was a positive emotional connection. And so when we understand where a behavior comes from, now we can have compassion. Compassion is not, let's say, it's not a get out of jail free card, right? So let's just say you had a hard day and you're halfway down a bottle of wine. Now, the type of coaching that most people encounter is, Karen, you know better than this. Wag, wag, wag. That's not coaching. That's not, now you're just going to want to hide your behaviors because you don't
Right.
want to feel ashamed of being called out. Now, on the other hand, if I was to go, well, you're already halfway down the bottle, you might as well finish the rest of it, right off tonight. Well, I'm not actually helping you. I'm enabling you to continue in an unhelpful behavior pattern. So compassion really walks the middle road and says, all right, Karen, how's the day been? What's going on? How's your week been? We recognize that it's not helpful to down half a bottle of wine, but we also want to understand that behavior happened for a reason. So let's understand why it happened. And we get curious rather than judgmental. And in that space of sort of curious awareness or compassionate awareness is where we really get to create change. And that's where the magic of coaching takes place.
And I love that because we do another show here called the Intentionality Gurus, and it's about it's personal coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I can take just about anything from that show and adapt it to so many parts of my life. And
Yeah.
just like you said, yeah, okay, so I was binge eating those Oreo cookies when I said I was going to have one for my dessert, and now half the bag is gone.
Yeah.
Why did I do it? Well, I did it. Okay. I can correct that behavior for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I can stop right now rather than eating the second half.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, it's digging deep inside, and some of us don't want to do that
Mm-hmm.
because it may be more painful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really valid point. And so my goal as a coach is to create, for lack of a better term, I'll call it a safe space. I don't love the term, but what I mean is I want to create a space where you can wrestle with your demons in the light, where you can bring your struggles to me, and I'm not going to use them as ammunition against you. We're not going to create judgment. And I think that's really important. So when we try to do this ourselves, to create change means that we become vulnerable because we're moving out of our comfort zone. Now, biologically speaking, if we feel isolated and vulnerable, we're more likely to retreat back into our old familiar patterns of behavior because that's where safety, I'm saying safety in air quotes, lies. Now, when you're connected to another human being who is safe to be around, who is a support, and who has your back, now you know it's actually safe to be vulnerable and because someone else is watching your back for you. And that's why in the age of Google, the age of infinite information, coaching is still a thing because we need human connection.
Absolutely. So, how can our listeners find you?
Freedomnutritioncoach.com. That's my website. So spelled as it sounds. People are welcome to reach out there. I do have a free resource if people would like a copy. It's called Crush Your Cravings. So it's to help people navigate this sort of emotional eating landscape. So freedomnutritioncoach.com/book. So I tried to make it pretty easy to remember.
That's wonderful. And we'll have this all in the show notes. So for those
Absolutely,
of
yeah.
you listening and you're saying, hey, I didn't catch it, just go back and read it.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, Jonathan, that we could have you back. I'd love to have you on the Intentionality Gurus because I think
Yeah.
talking about just life changes, you know, we're all going through them. And especially this last year and a half, we're all making huge changes.
Yeah.
And, it's okay to not be sure exactly what path you want to take, but sometimes that little nudge, somebody's
Mhm.
showing you what can be different,
Yeah.
can make a big difference. So again,
Yeah.
thank you so very much for joining us. And I hope you get to go play with the baby now.
That's exactly what I'm going to do.
It sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you so much.
have a great weekend and stay warm up there in Canada.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye now.